Have you ever picked up a soft, fuzzy-looking pad of metal and wondered, what exactly is this stuff? It looks like wool, feels like a bundle of tangled threads, but somehow it's made entirely of steel. You've probably seen it used for cleaning burnt pans, polishing wood, or even in DIY projects. But steel wool is one of those everyday items most people never stop to think about. So today we're diving into a simple question with a surprisingly interesting answer. What exactly is steel wool? And as it turns out, there's more to it than just shredded metal. Right here, on History of Simple Things. Steel wool didn't just randomly appear in hardware stores. Its origins go back to the 19th century, when industrial metalworking techniques started to become more precise and widespread. Before steel wool, craftsmen relied on materials like sand, pumice, or even natural fibers for polishing and cleaning. As steel production improved during the Industrial Revolution, manufacturers discovered they could shave or grind steel into extremely thin strands. These fine filaments turned out to be perfect for smoothing surfaces without causing deep scratches. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, steel wool was being mass-produced and sold as a cleaning and finishing tool. It quickly became a household staple, especially as more people began using metal cookware and wooden furniture that needed regular maintenance. At its core, steel wool is exactly what it sounds like, very thin strands of steel bundled together into a pad. But the key detail here is how thin those strands are. Each filament is shaved from a larger piece of steel until it becomes almost hair-like. These strands are then tangled together into a loose, airy mass. That's what gives steel wool its soft, flexible texture, even though it's made from a very hard material. The steel used is typically low-carbon steel, which makes it easier to shape and less brittle than higher-carbon varieties. This also helps prevent the strands from snapping too easily when you use them. Despite its delicate appearance, steel wool is surprisingly strong and durable, which is why it can scrub away grime without completely falling apart. One of the most interesting things about steel wool is the contrast between how it feels and what it can do. When you touch it lightly, it feels soft and almost cushion-like, but when you press it against a surface, those fine steel strands act like thousands of tiny cutting edges. This allows it to scrape away rust, dirt, or old finishes. Think of it as a flexible version of sandpaper. Instead of a flat sheet with abrasive particles glued on, steel wool conforms to the shape of whatever you're cleaning. That's why it's especially useful for curved or uneven surfaces, like pots, pipes, or carved wood. The effectiveness comes from friction. As the strands move across a surface, they shave off tiny layers of material. That's how it removes stains, smooths wood, or polishes metal. Not all steel wool is the same. In fact, it comes in different grades depending on how coarse or fine the strands are. The grading system usually ranges from very coarse to extremely fine. Coarser grades have thicker strands and are used for heavy-duty jobs like removing rust or stripping paint. Finer grades, on the other hand, are used for polishing and finishing because they leave smoother results. For example, ultra-fine steel wool is often used in woodworking to give surfaces a silky finish or to apply wax evenly. Meanwhile, medium grades are commonly used for cleaning kitchenware. This variety is what makes steel wool so versatile. It can go from aggressive scrubbing to delicate polishing just by changing the grade. Steel wool has found its way into all kinds of everyday tasks. In the kitchen, it's often used to clean stubborn grease and burnt food from pots and pans. In woodworking, it helps smooth surfaces and prepare them for finishing. It's also used in metalwork to polish surfaces or remove oxidation. But its uses go beyond cleaning. Steel wool is sometimes used in science experiments because it reacts easily with oxygen. When ignited, it burns in a bright, sparkling reaction, something you might have seen in long-exposure photography. It's also used as a pest deterrent. Because it's tough and hard to chew through, people sometimes stuff it into small gaps to keep rodents from getting inside walls or cabinets. If you've ever left steel wool out in a damp place, you've probably noticed it rusts very quickly. That's because of its structure. Steel wool has a massive surface area compared to a solid piece of steel. All those thin strands are exposed to air and moisture, which speeds up the process of oxidation. Rust forms when iron reacts with oxygen and water, and since steel is mostly iron, it's highly susceptible. The finer the strands, the faster this reaction can happen. Some steel wool products are coated with oil or treated to resist rust, but untreated versions will oxidize fairly quickly if not stored properly. Despite being a common household item, steel wool does come with a few safety concerns. First, it's flammable. Those thin strands can ignite easily, especially in fine grades. That's why it should always be kept away from open flames unless you're intentionally using it for a controlled experiment. Second, it can leave behind tiny metal fragments. These can stick to surfaces or even your skin, so it's a good idea to handle it carefully and clean up thoroughly after use. Finally, using steel wool on certain surfaces like non-stick cookware or delicate finishes can cause damage. It's always important to match the grade to the task. Steel wool might seem like a basic household item, but it's actually a clever piece of engineering. By turning solid steel into ultra-thin strands, manufacturers created a tool that's both gentle and abrasive at the same time. It can clean, polish, smooth, and even spark, making it far more versatile than it looks at first glance. So the next time you pick up a pad of steel wool, you'll know you're not just holding a scrubber. You're holding a bundle of finely engineered metal designed to solve all kinds of everyday problems. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.